Good night, everyone. Tonight, God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Irma J. Spiritual. I'm here to give you a little shout on news and a word on tonight. Um, Now we see we have a vacancy for the government speaker. Um, the speaker official role is moderate debate. Make rulings on procedures, announce the result of votes. You know, and the likes. So the speaker decide who may speak and has the power to discipline members who break the procedure of the chaplain of the House. So I think I think Obama would be a good choice for government speaker if he wants a position. You know, um, he familiar with most of the stuff from being the president. You know, so I think he'll be a good choice. For the next government speaker if he wants a position. Obama. Obama would be a good choice for government speaker. You know, so um, so we still talking about Paul. We still talking about Paul. So now Paul about to he about to perceive a miracle, but the power coming from God. So there was a man was sitting down. Who was lame. He was crippled. He could not walk. Now he had been that way from birth and never could be able to walk. So now Paul is on his second missionary journey. Now he will meet Timothy in Durban on the way. So he encountered with the crippled man. Now we know that Peter healed a crippled man who couldn't walk in a power that he used was from Jesus. And remember Peter had I just put that out like a couple of weeks. Peter said, "What I don't have no silver and gold." He said, "But what I do have is in the name of the Lord." Now he said he used his power through Jesus. He made that crippled man walk. And now we see that Paul about to do the same thing. So he listened to Paul as he was speaking. you know, and Paul looked directly, at him and saw that he had faith to be healed. So then Paul and Baltimore are spreading the good news, that Jesus, offers salvation and reconciliation with God. So in the listening crowd is a man who had been crippled from birth. And Paul sees that the man have faith. He looked in this man's eye. He looked directly in his eyes, and he saw that this man had faith that he wants to be healed. You know, so, um, so he called out. So Paul called out, stand up. He said, stand up on your feet. At that time, the man not only just stood up, the man jumped up. He jumped up and he began to walk. Just like when Peter had made that man walk. This man jumped up and was running around, ran into the temple and everything else. And see, this man here, Paul told him to stand up. This man jumped up. So we see the first record, a miracle of Paul's ministry as he healed a crippled man. Now, this man who was crippled from birth was healed after he listened to Paul speak. So Paul then called to him to stand up. Where he jumped up and started walking. Now, see, Paul on the journey. And see, Paul was preaching to the crowd. And there go the crippled man was there. Listen to everything that Paul was saying. You know. And so when a crowd had saw, what Paul had done, they shouted, with a different kind of language. So they were talking all kind of different kind of language. And then their God had come down to us in a human form. So they think their God came down in a human form. They really think their God is real. So when a crowd had saw the miracle on this crippled man to walk, Baltimore, They called Zealand and Paul, and they called because he was the chief speaker. So now, this man Zena, he think he God. He think he God, and he was two popular gods in Roman world, and people, from claiming that these gods had once visited their city. Now they think a god had visited their city. And when a citizen like Troy had saw miracles of Paul, they assumed their God was visiting them. They visit, so they thought their God did some miracle. Now the priest of Azirim, who temple was just outside the city, had brought sheep, bulls, and everything else, the city gate, because he in a crowd had wanted to offer sacrifices to the, so they wanted to offer sacrifice to the crowd, but not to Paul. So they were supposed to offer the sacrifice to Paul and Barnabas, but they give it to the crowd. you know. But when the apostle Bartimaeus and Paul heard of this, they torn their clothes and they had rushed out into the crowd shop. They weren't supposed to give sacrifices to the crowd. So immediately the apostle had rejected the labor of God that had placed on them. You see what it is. They're not supposed. They're worshiping other gods. The God with the small G. They're worshiping that God, and they're not supposed to worshiping that God. They giving sacrifices to the. They giving sacrifice to the crowd. you know so when Paul heard about it tearing their clothes, it was a sign of deep distress. So the friends, why are you doing this? We are too are only human like you. Now we are bringing you good news and telling you to turn from these worthless things to the living God who made the heaven and earth, and sea and everything that's in it. See, they're worshiping the other gods. They think by Paul made this man walk, they're thinking their God to drop down and perceive that miracle. They don't even believe that Paul did the miracle. They think their God did the miracle. Talking about our God had visited us. He had to drop down. So the rejection of auto worship practice is a basis test of conversation for the Gentile. So in the past, now he had let all the nation go their own way. So when he had released the Israelite from slavery, they start complaining and all this kind of stuff. And that's how that's how Esau and his family, they went that way. The other group went this way. But Esau died, but his children still had perceived their own nation. So that's why everybody went their separate ways. Because it already was supposed to be set out for two nations, for Jacob and Esau, and it did just that. When God released them for slavery, they took their group and went that way, and they went this way. So let all nations go their own way. And see, one thing about God not gonna force you to do nothing. You know, He not gonna force you to do nothing. But the decision they made it on their own, and they had went separate ways. So Paul is trying to introduce the true God. That they insist on offering sacrifice, to Paul and Baltimore. But the people reject God and embrace evil. Now he talking about the Israel when they had went their way. That's what he's talking about, the Israelite. When he got them from slavery. They want to go their own way because they was wandering around in the land, and they figured they'll go their way. So but yet he had not left, himself without a testimony that he has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and in its season. Because God is the only one that can do the weather. God is the only one that can make rain. He can stop the rain. You know, there for years they have no rain. And God brought some rain in this season. So He provide that you with plenty of food and filled your heart with joy. So Paul had told them that these blessings had come from the true God who live, in heaven and not from Zim. So see, Paul trying to tell them, the true God bless you. You know, they still want to believe Zeta. They still want to believe him. That he brought the blessing down. And so Paul trying to let them know, no, he's a false God. The true God brought the blessing down, was kind to y'all. The true God, not this other God. So even with these words, they had difficulty keeping the crowd from sacrificing to them. So their conscience was believed, but no matter what Paul was saying, their conscience believed in the false God. So Zeno was filling them with lies that he would give blessing. But Paul said, no, the only true God, will give you blessing. So Paul and Barnabas was horrified and distressed, and they quickly had tried to correct the people misunderstanding. So they had misunderstanding, and so Paul had to correct them. And so Paul just turning out to be a good prophet, and to say how he started out. So he was distressed. He had to correct them of their misunderstanding. That's why you got to study that Bible real good, because you don't want to start preaching and teaching false stuff. That's why when Paul started out, he had to take a break, to learn more about Jesus before he even start on his journey. So then some Jews, had came from the city and won the crowd over. So they stoned Paul, and dragged him outside the city thinking he was dead. So they stoned Paul, and because, God had told him, you're gonna experience some pain and suffering, so they stoned Paul. They dragged him outside of the city, thinking he was dead. So they were just gonna leave him out there to be dead. So on the days after the people, thought that Paul and Barnabas was gone, they wanted to offer sacrifices to him, but they stoned Paul and left him for dead. Now we can't put trust in a crowd. We got to put the trust in God. So, but after the disciple had gathered around him, he got up, he went back into the city, and the next day, him and Barnabas had left to go to another city. See, they're still on their journey. They go to show you how faithful he is. They stoned him and wish they thought he was dead. And he on this mission. So drag him outside the city. Thought he was dead. But then he hop up. Now instead of him woo-hoo, he got up and he went to another city to keep his ministry going. He didn't stop. That means he very dedicated, to what he doing. Very committed to what he doing. So but after the disciple had gathered around him, he got up. He got up to continue on his ministry. So Paul and Barnabas was persistent, in the preaching of the gospel. And now Paul was stoned, but now they had just narrow escaped, being stoned. So Paul preached the word all over the world on hardship. Come on, on hardship, on a strengthened commitment, being a disciple. Now, Paul used his first miracle on his second journey. This is second journey right here. So they're very dedicated. He been stoned. And they dragged him out the outside of the city. Thought he was dead. Just left him out there for days. He woke up, shook everything off, and he went on back, to continue on his journey. Not being dedicated. He didn't stop and say, "Well, heck, that's it. I'm going home." He didn't stop. He just kept going. So I mean, him and Baltimore, they were good together. They were good together because they didn't stop. They didn't turn around and went back home. They want to continue on their journey because God had picked the right one because see he very faithful in being committed to what he doing. He loved what he doing. And he probably never thought he was gonna be loving talking about Jesus when he wanted to stone and kill people his own self from talking about Jesus. Now he talking about Jesus and he cannot stop. He very committed of what he doing. So that's all the word I have for you. So we also talking about we need a government speaker right now. And I said Obama be a best choice, for a government speaker. He has the experience and the skills. So that's something to think about if he want the position. So we need to think about that, because he have the experience and he have the skills. So that's all I have for you tonight. Y'all have a blessed and safe night, and I'll see y'all on the next video.